Change this better. Guess we'll be on in a second. I know it's super early on the West Coast. This is an early podcast that I'm doing this morning. Um, who I have on is a family member, it's my cousin. Um, she is a social worker, and she's a social worker at an elementary school, if I'm not mistaken, um, in Arizona. And I had to have her on because we will be talking about mental health awareness, and we will be talking about childhood traumas. I think it's very important, especially in the Black community, and what's going on today, especially with COVID and going on, and kids going to school, having the choice to go to school or just stand at home. What that look like for your kids who are used to interaction with their friends and no longer having interaction. I know now I'm in North Carolina and it's open. Some parts are. You got Atlanta who's wide open. You got some states who are wide open. And kids are able to play and things like that. I mean, I have a daughter, she's 4. And, I feel like it took a toll on her, the fact that she couldn't see her friends. She couldn't play. She couldn't go out and do the things she wanted to do. It was a minute before she can go back to gymnastics, but she's back now. She's able to see her best friend and spend some time with her. Which you see the difference in the behavior. You see the difference in you know moods. I must say, and things like that. So yeah, that is something definitely we're going to touch on, and she will be on in just a minute. We go. She's on. Bring her in. Into the stream. And hey, Kita.
Hey.
How are you?
Oh, good. My allergies kicking my ass this morning.
I bet. Yeah, I know. I can tell out that way. I was looking at Kylie, and I hit Kiana up like, does she have allergies? Because you can see it all in her face. You're like, yeah, both of them do. I say, yeah, I can tell because Lola started to flare up last week.
Mm-hmm.
Springtime. Springtime.
I just woke up. I was like, what the hell? Why my nose? Just all.
How's the weather out that way?
It's nice.
The sun came out today. We was on tornado watch 2 days ago.
Hell no. So we in the low 80s.
Oh, y'all good. Shit, we in the 50s today.
Yeah, I'm in the
but
desert.
The sun is out.
Summer here for us.
Y'all lucky. Can't wait.
Yeah, until this bitch hit 120.
Ugh, that's nasty.
Yeah. Yeah. Let me see. I'm just trying to adjust this little tripod thing.
Well, I'm glad I could have you on because I mean we tried to do this before and yeah, it didn't save. That was a minute ago. It did not save at all. Which
do you
was
still use Anchor?
Yeah, I still use Anchor. So what I do is
record on
record on here and then I download the audio.
Yeah.
And I download the video and I post the video to my YouTube.
That's
and
nice.
then I put the audio onto Anchor, and Anchor puts it on Spotify and all the other platforms.
Yeah.
So, yep. So, today I know we've been talking about mental health. So,
hold on. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. I was making sure it wasn't paused.
Okay. So introduce yourself to the people and tell them what it is that you do and how long you've been doing it.
Well, first, thank you for having me on. My name is Marquita Lagarde. I am a licensed clinical social worker. I currently work and reside in Phoenix, Arizona, where I am a practicing social work, school social worker here in Phoenix. I have, in June, I'll be 4 years post master's degree. And I recently received my temp license here in Arizona to practice providing mental health treatment. I also do medical social work where I provide clinical case management to people either in emergency rooms, post-surgery, post-delivery, pre-delivery. So I do a wide variety of things right now, just trying to build my skills. And then personally, I have a platform where I talk exclusively about mental health, targeting Black communities to introduce more of the discussion around mental health, normalizing those conversations. So I currently run a mental health page on Instagram, and I have my own podcast where we just have brief discussions, just almost like introductory conversations that'll hopefully expand and allow people to start having those necessary conversations with their own families.
That's awesome. So you're almost done with your master's?
I'm done with my master's.
Okay.
Yeah. I finished my master's in 2017.
Damn. Mm-hmm. I mean, when you started this journey, mm-hmm. Here we are in 2021. Wow. Mm-hmm. That's crazy. It's crazy. So, about mental health, and I know some things are I know when it comes to this, a lot of things are confidential, especially with clients and things like that. So I know I got my questions written down or right in front of me. I'm trying to do this right. Because I know some things you can't talk about, and there's some things you can't go into depth with. what are some of the things that you've seen of how people cope with some of the mental health, like anxiety and things like that. So if you had somebody who had anxiety, how what methods or what type of um, counseling do you give them to deal with something like anxiety?
Yeah. So I'll go back. Coping skills, they can either be positive or negative, right? We all
Hmm.
have them, we all utilize them. Sometimes they're not healthy, but they may work, right? We may think
Hmm.
drinking alcohol is a form of coping, right? You
Hmm.
may engage in substance abuse as a form of coping. You may overconsume alcohol as a form of coping. Even working out, right, is a form of coping. Um, but what I do more in a clinical setting is, especially specifically with someone with anxiety, is first help them kind to identify what are their triggers, right? What
Hmm.
sets you off? What usually causes you to feel anxious, overwhelmed, have an over extended amount of thoughts that are roaming through your head, right? Because that's usually what leads to anxiety for a lot of people. They say, like, I can't sleep. My brain won't shut off. There's just a lot of things happening.
My wife.
We talk a lot about like your triggers, right? What sets you off? What's usually happening? What happened before? What's happening after? What's happening during? And then I help them kind of reflect too. Where do they feel this in their body? How do
Hmm.
you know that you're feeling anxious or that anxious feeling is happening? And then some of the coping skills that we will reflect on, I'll talk about what are you currently doing, right? How are you currently coping with this? We'll discuss whether that's working or not working. What are the long term risk and benefits of your current coping strategies? And then I will introduce new strategies such as like utilizing stress balls. Maybe working out is something that you haven't tried. It might be something that you can introduce to your body, right? Because that working out gets those endorphins moving, will help sometimes decrease a lot of those anxious thoughts and feelings. Um, I always like to try to introduce like deep breathing techniques, doing some meditation, some mindful meditation. And when I talk about meditation, I always tell people it's not going to be perfect, right? Especially if you're
Hmm.
anxious, your brain is going to like roam off and you're going to start losing focus, and that's okay. And so you just have to listen to your body and accept that, acknowledge that you've lost your train of thought, and then try to bring yourself back to that moment. My Meditation just gives you a time to honor yourself in your body, taking that moment to just really pause and reflect. So I'm a really huge proponent of meditation. There are also ways to cope through medication. So if you feel like, okay, I've tried all these strategies and they work, but I'm still restless
Hmm.
at night, or I'm still not able to function through my daily living, right? Because that's
Hmm.
huge, right? We want to make sure that we're successful and functioning throughout our day. I may suggest, okay, well, let's get you assessed with a psychiatrist and see what the psychiatrist can provide for you in helping you to be successful day to day.
So how important, especially in the Black community, how important is it to see a psychiatrist when you're dealing with these things like anxiety? You're dealing with traumas. You're dealing with childhood traumas as an adult. How important is a therapist?
I think a therapist can be very beneficial. What I always tell people in the mental health profession, though, we have to be mindful culturally that therapy isn't our go-to for Black people, right? Or a
Mm-hmm.
lot of minorities, right? We don't really talk about therapy. We don't really suggest people to go to therapy. So you have to be very culturally aware of these stigmas and that hesitation, and be very intentional about how you engage Black and Brown communities. But I have my own therapist right now, and I can say that it's very beneficial. It definitely gives you, like I said, that space to honor your truth and
Mm-hmm.
really process what happened to you, what led you here. Was there a chain of events? Was it just a singular event? And really giving back to yourself, because what therapy will allow you to do, give back to yourself what you weren't given and what it was that you needed, right? So a lot of
Mm-hmm.
times people with trauma, if you ask them, okay, when this traumatic event happened, how did the people in your life respond? sometimes they'll say that they like either they didn't believe me, they ignored me, they were cold, they were distant. So therapy allows you in that space to give that to yourself, right? Your therapy
Mm-hmm.
will process with you in that moment when that happened. What did you need? And if it's a hug, we will validate that, and, and encourage you to give that to yourself. Or if it's words of
Mm-hmm.
encouragement, if it's just someone simply saying, "You're going to be okay. I believe you." We open up that space for you to give that back to yourself. We as therapists give that to you. We validate uh, proof, and then we help you to try to move forward in that process of recovery, of healing. And so therapy can be very beneficial. It's a space that's unbiased, it's safe.
Mm-hmm.
Um, think about those times when someone did cause you harm. People that know you, they may judge you, right? Or they may
Yeah.
have their preconceived thoughts about who you are. And so that shapes how they respond to you. In a therapeutic space, we don't know you, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
we open that space up for you to just speak your truth, to be your truthful self, and work through some things that are really serious and could be potentially detrimental to your life long term.
Okay. Yeah, I think therapy is really important. I've taken therapy for my childhood traumas. My childhood traumas snuck up on me at 26,
Yeah.
27.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't really know that these things are happening in a sense because you bury them so
Mm-hmm.
deep down
Mm-hmm.
and you just move on with life. You're just moving on with life. And then all of a sudden you're in a relationship or you're dealing with somebody and you're reacting. It's very reactional.
Mm-hmm.
Everything is a reaction. And
Mm-hmm.
you wondering why you reacting that way or something triggered you. And it's them things because you find out as you go to digging and trying to unpack all these things that, hey, this is why this is going on or this
Mm-hmm.
is why this is happening. And like you said, therapy is they don't know you. So
Mm-hmm.
they're not gonna judge you. They're there to help. They're there to help you be a better you in the
Yep.
long run.
Absolutely. Everything you said is absolutely our goal at the end of the day. Is just to help you be a better you, right? And you're right. Sometimes you are because you're living, right? And so you don't
Yeah.
realize that the trauma is happening. Or it's so normalized in your familial dynamic or in your community, right? That you're just like, this is just how it is.
Hmm.
Sometimes not until you enter new spaces that may not have those same traumatic connections, right? Those same trauma bonds that
Yeah.
you realize, like, oh, this isn't normal. Like how I approach people or how I react to being confronted about different dynamics isn't normal how I respond.
Hmm.
It does. It takes a someone that one is willing to change and that is brave in the process of recovery to say, okay, I'm going to go to a therapist because this isn't going to serve me if I keep responding to people in this way.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, like you said, which is very important, is a family dynamic. Which there are all types of family dynamics. I'm in a family dynamic myself, and a blended family dynamic. And when you talk about a blended family, you have it's so many. You're talking about stepdad, mother, stepkids, kid. You're talking about stepmom, kids, stepdad. I mean stepmom. They have a kid together. Now you got to deal with their family, that family. It's all that dynamic is very. It can be very hard at times. I feel um, draining, and also dealing with um, you know you're dealing with your own traumas in that sense, and not having. I know personally for me, uh, not having a dad. Well, I have a dad, but dad's not in the picture. Mom is not in the picture. Being raised by aunts and uncles and things like that. Like that dynamic um, played a significant role. I know in my life, but I know personally, I still felt the traumas of not having dad and mom and in that dynamic of having that family, concept of, growing up. So, um, I'm just speaking to that because I know it's a lot of people out there who didn't grow up with their mom in the house or dad or being raised by grandma and things like that
Yeah.
because of the the traumas and the family dynamic that you just had to succumb
Yeah.
and the things that you had to go through in that space in that space.
Yeah.
Uh, um,
I think what you speak
I'm,
to is a lot of like the nucleus families and the blended families, and
hmm
how and obviously people are trying to do the best that they can, and they try to step up to the plate and fill in those gaps, right? And that's usually what's beautiful about family, right? They
hmm
come and try to step up to the plate, but I think sometimes in those blendedness or in that nucleus dynamic, we miss that piece of um this kid or this person still needs their mom, right?
yeah,
They still
yeah,
needed their dad. And yes, you did a wonderful job, but I still have hurt, right? I
yeah,
still grieve. I
yeah,
still feel this broken connection with this person. And it has nothing to do with the people that raised me. It's more with my own need. That's just, it's natural, right?
natural, yeah,
It's our inherent desire. This person carried me for 9 months, and then I
hmm
just have no connection.
yeah,
And so I often wonder, well, why do you seek out, why do they seek out this person? Because that's my almost animalistic connection, right? That's just
yeah,
who I was connected
yeah,
in the womb when I didn't know anything or anyone. In my mind, this person kept me safe, right?
yeah.
This person kept me protected in her body. And now all of a sudden I'm on the outside and I'm like, well, where's this
With
person?
this
Where's
person,
the voice that I heard? So you always will naturally crave that and seek that out. And sometimes you may get that. And then sometimes once again, you have to go through a process of acceptance, right? Radical
hmm
acceptance of, well, I have no control over this person wanting to be in my life. So how do I recover from this? How do I move forward and be okay when this person has just decided that, or for whatever reason, maybe they're gone, maybe they've passed
hmm
away. How do I accept that this is my reality? I think even for myself, that's something I've had to work through with my dad passing at such a young age.
hmm
Um, how do I accept that this person, for whatever reason, just isn't here? And I have like
hmm
this phantom idea of this person. Um, and now I have a hole there, and I want to find a way to fill it in a healthy way.
in a
So
healthy way. And
even
that's the
as
key word.
yeah, I think even as parents, it's important to acknowledge that. Don't get in your
hmm
feels. Don't be like, oh well, I'm here. I'm here. I'm
Yeah,
listening every
yeah,
day.
yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah.
really not about that.
No, yeah,
Because many people are dual, right? I can do both. I can acknowledge that you're raising me, but also acknowledge that I'm really missing this piece of this person, whether they're good or bad for my life.
yeah. That's
So,
very important that you said that because sometimes I find myself doing that with my boys. Like, okay, I'm here. Like, I've been here for 6, 7 years. Like,
mhm.
and that right there, it speaks to exactly what you said because sometimes I can be so caught up in myself and what I'm doing to where yeah, these boys still need their dad. Even though I'm here.
Because you
You
feel, I mean,
know.
we feel it. Like,
hmm
kids are human, right? We see
Yeah.
them just, oh, as they're kids and whatever, but they're just little people. Like,
Yeah.
they have the same feelings we feel. They have the same needs and desires that we have. And so just think about you as an adult. If you had these needs and desires where you miss someone and you still
Yeah.
want that connection, whatever that relationship was, kids are going to have that same feeling. I mean, they can't
hmm
just make it go away.
Yeah, that's true. That is so true. Yeah, it'll be and one thing like this, I know this year I find myself thinking, you know, um, it's been 20 years. It'll be 20 years this year that my
Yeah.
mom been gone.
Yeah.
And it's like just that whole process, and even naming my daughter after her, it's kind of um difficult, if I'm being honest with myself.
Yeah.
So um, I got another question. Um, so childhood traumas. So how is what is one of the methods that you use when it comes to the kids, as far as the childhood traumas? I know everybody's not raised in the same household and environment, so I know each kid is different. So how do you handle that, and and what methods do you use, as far as you may have somebody with a behavior problem, or you may have somebody that the kids at home and they're in an abusive uh they're in an abusive relationship, not a relationship, but in an abusive environment when it comes to these kids, because I know growing up it happens.
Yeah. I think, well, a lot of my practice is driven by my assessment. So when I assess
Hmm.
them, um, considering their age, their level of understanding, what was the trauma, right? So if I feel like, perfect example, I've had a client that was sexually abused, and when they disclosed this sexual abuse, no one believed them. In fact, a lot of the
Wow.
family members turned on them and just really disconnected
Wow.
the kid. And so, right, so just imagine being abused is one trauma, but also being denied that your reality was the reality is a whole nother trauma, right? Because as a child, you feel like, well, these are the adults in my life. They care for me. They're supposed to protect me. And when I tell them my truth, they're going to believe me, or at least that's what you, as a child, believe. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and that's valid. You should believe that until adults show you otherwise. And so in that instance, I would use, again, this was a teenager, so we decided to use what's called trauma focused cognitive behavioral therapy. So it's what's considered a trained treatment modality. So modalities are just different, more specific ways of approaching different diagnoses or traumatic experiences. So there's a wide range of treatment modalities that we learn. And so TFCBT is what I specialize in. And
Mm-hmm.
so I what that allows me to do is um, not really the perpetrator, but it allowed for my client to have one, process her trauma, but have that serious one-on-one conversation with her mom, and
Mm-hmm.
really try to get her mom to understand, but also help her to have closure, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whether her mom accepted her truth moving forward, she at least had the chance to confront it, have herself be heard, because a lot of times we just want to be heard, right? We don't
Yeah.
want to be
Yeah.
shut down, we don't want to be talked down to and called a liar. So,
Yeah.
what I create in that setting is a safe space for my client to speak her truth, right? And have her narrative heard. um and a lot of it too is working with the parent and helping them understand how important this step is so your child can move forward,
Yes.
and how beneficial it will be. So parents have to be open. They don't have to be like crazy open to the idea, but just be open enough to hear me out, hear my client out, so they can move forward in their healing process. For my little, so I work with very little kids, kindergarten age and up. Um, in those instances of trauma, a lot of times I just do what's called play therapy. So that's another treatment modality where we'll just play, and not like how you see on like Law and Order. We're not acting out the trauma.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes my clients they'll draw it, they'll draw the trauma that happened to them. But a lot of
Mm.
times it's playing in a way of reteaching them ways to recover. So reteaching healthy boundaries, reteaching communication, and like reteaching the skill for them to advocate for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
If it's, again, if it's sexual abuse for a little kid, I have board games that we play where we talk about what's safe and unsafe, right? What's safe touch, what's unsafe touch. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so it's a lot of rebuilding, like I said, what are healthy boundaries? What are healthy ways to cope with all of this? They may not be able to process all of that occur to them, but a lot of my job is just to um, disrupt the chaos that was previous introduced into their lives and introduce healthier ways to navigate day-to-day functioning and really work through what occurred. And then so hopefully it gives them a solid foundation as they get older, and if they decide to go to therapy they have a lot of the skills, and then
Mm-hmm.
then they can get into the space of processing once they get a little older, to understand, okay, what happened, and then when it feels difficult, okay, I can always rely on my healthy coping skills and not run to like negative coping skills.
So have you seen in some of the things that you have in some of your clients that these parents are in denial that this stuff is actually happening?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because if they're not being identified as the perpetrator for whatever the traumatic experience was, someone they love may be identified as the perpetrator, or someone that they know, or and sometimes parents do it not out of like I'm trying to protect anyone. Sometimes they do it because they're just in denial because they can't believe that it happened. And sometimes I
Mm,
found that parents have experienced their own trauma. And so hearing
mm,
that their child has experienced trauma, it could be triggering for them, right?
yes.
So then they go back
Yeah.
to their natural response of, I'm going to shut down, I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
disconnect, I'm not going to acknowledge this because no one ever acknowledged it.
Acknowledge me. Mm-hmm.
Yes. And so
Mm-hmm.
sometimes I found like the parent isn't trying to cause harm or trying to just be dismissive to their kid. It's just they don't even know what to do. They're like,
Because
and
they
oftentimes
went through that themselves and
right,
they didn't even know then. Now they're adults and they
right,
still haven't dealt with that trauma.
right.
And
And
it's like
so
a flashback.
it is, and it
Wow.
hurts. It's scary. It's uncertain. And a lot of times too, I'll have parents. I always check in with my parents after sessions. And a lot of times my sessions with them turn into their own therapy sessions where they are disclosing that, I was abused.
Mm-hmm.
My family didn't believe me. And, I believe my child, but I just don't know how to say it. It's almost like they're stuck with this permanent lump in their throat. And now
Mm-hmm.
this event has come back to their space, and it feels like a violation.
Yeah.
Um, Now, granted, you will have family members that are not talking about it because they want to sweep it under the rug, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's familial shame. There's guilt there. They, it sometimes naturally it's important to protect family, no matter what the crime was. Um, or you just have I've had really horrible situations where the parent was the perpetrator, or they were involved in facilitating the perpetration.
Mm-hmm.
So it comes in different ways, and you just address it as it comes, right? In our practice, no day or no situation is the same. You might have seen similar cases, but um, sometimes the response will be different. Sometimes the involvement will be different, and so you just navigate as it comes, right? You have to be very open to whoever's knocking at your door, and being very
Mm-hmm.
intentional about how do you engage this person in an individual way, and remembering that no, the therapeutic process is not black and white. It's very
Mm.
specific to the person that you're working with that day.
Yeah. That is very interesting because, you read, I know I read, and I know it's always some story that these parents are abusive or kids come up missing, and it's just, it hurts. It's bad. It's sad and it's bad. What made you want to be a social worker and a therapist? Like, what made you want to do that? Because I know you wanted to do legal stuff.
Yeah.
I know you was in your legal bag for a minute.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, I just know Marquita's gonna be a lawyer or something. I know that. And then you you
I
flip the
did
script
want to
like,
be a lawyer. I'm contemplating going to law school now. I haven't really
okay.
given that up. I may still go. I think what led me to this profession, one, entering into the legal space, I did have opportunities to like just observe people in in the practice of law, and I don't know. Sometimes I felt like people just didn't care enough, or they
Hmm.
really couldn't care enough because their caseloads were so huge, and I just felt like, okay, I don't want to be that person, a part of the system where I'm treating people like they're numbers. So that's
Yeah.
always my hesitation, because even when you enter into a court place, a lot of times people are there because of their trauma, right? They're
Yeah.
there because of whatever occurred in their lives led them down this path. And then also just considering the judicial system as a whole and how it over polices black and brown communities. I also was like, I don't know if I want to be a part of that either. But I
Hmm.
did have a professor tell, kind of highlight in my mind, like, if we want to change systems, we have to be a part of them. You've got to be able to get on the inside and dismantle these systems. I think it takes a huge level of confidence in yourself to
Yeah.
be able to stand up to these systems. And I do think we have quite a ways to go still before these spaces are more culturally intuitive to all people and not over
Hmm.
policing one community over the next.
Over another. Yeah,
So that's
definitely.
what turned me away from law. Um, and what led me to the mental health profession, when I went to college, I started off like not pre-law but political science, and then I switched to psychology, and I found that I really loved psychology. I loved the concepts and the theories, and I loved how much I found ways to even analyze my own experiences in my own
Mm.
childhood and work through those things on my own, and eventually go into therapy on my own. And then I had the fortune to work in group homes and in community mental health, like so community based services. And that is what kind of switched the light bulb on me for social work, because I felt like it was such a diverse profession where I could do a wide variety of things. And then so I thought about myself, our own family dynamics, um, just, asking my mom just a wide variety of questions about our grandmother,
Hmm.
our grandmother's parents, your mom,
Hmm.
and just being very intentional about how did we get here? What
Yeah.
systems
Yeah.
helped us? And so I think that is what led me to the profession. Just thinking about, well, if I knew what I know now, how much of a difference it could have made in my family. Um, you guys know now I'm very intentional about sharing
Yep.
methods, getting treatment, seeking out therapy, a huge advocate of seeking out therapy. And so I often think about, like, there are lots of black families out there that just, it's not that they don't care, they're just not aware of how beneficial it can be, because the history of mental health has been harmful, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Just listening to the story from my mom or Aunt Katie Sue talk about how their dad was placed in a mental institution, right? And so it's
Hmm.
just like a generation of people lost because this mental institution
Nutrition.
didn't fully consider the damage that it would have, not just on this man, but his kids, the
Yep.
generation after them. And so I definitely went in the profession not to save myself, but to save other Black families, to further educate and become more knowledgeable in the practice and understanding, how do I help my community? How do I make sure my community isn't missing out on resources or support? How do I lend to the voice of my community when I'm sitting at the table, having these discussions about equity and inclusion? How do I make sure that I always keep at the forefront that Black communities, we are very connected as a family, and there are ways that mental health can integrate more,
Yeah.
um, and having those dialogues about, okay, what is, it's, the onus shouldn't just be on the consumer. What is the mental health profession doing to ensure that people feel safe, that they know that what they can access, and when they do access it, they aren't being judged in these spaces. So I I wanted to be the face of um, my family, my community in a positive way, to ensure that they get what they need, um, and they feel that the process of moving forward and healing from those intergenerational traumas can be beneficial to the future generations to come. Um, yeah, so in my own trauma thinking, when I experience trauma, what did I need? And so I try to provide that every single day with my kids. I try to provide that when I'm thinking of policies that are being written, wherever I'm at. And
Hmm.
yeah, just adding more diversity to these spaces was very important to me.
That's good. That's really good. Because I know, our childhood, I know my childhood, our childhood was together and intertwined, I want to say, um, but different in so many ways. In talking about environments, our environments were different. Um, and I tell people all the time, my safe haven was coming to your house, growing up and things like that, because it allowed me to get away from the chaos, and a lot of people don't understand that, a lot of people didn't have that outlet of getting away from the chaos, so when growing up in chaos, you become susceptible to it as you grow up and as you're trying to build these relationships with people, and you get in a relationship, or you have somebody that you're with and y'all have a child, and now you're kind of building that same level or that same foundation of chaos, because now it's all you know. And that's one thing that even I try to share with my siblings, that therapy is important, especially for us, because your traumas is what you see now that you're an adult and you're walking this life at 30, 35, 29. These are traumas that you're enduring. These are things that are showing itself in your behavior, in your thinking, in how you move. Yet it's a problem, and it's becoming a problem, and people don't want to deal with you as a person because of your traumas, and you don't want to take responsibility. And that's one thing that I always try to tell people: you have to be responsible for yourself. Once you become responsible for yourself, and you go do the necessary steps, and you go through the necessary things that you need to go through and get in therapy, like I said, to become a better you. Because if you're not a better you can't get mad when nobody want to be around you. And that's always my biggest thing. And when I talk to people about therapy, is because it's not a bad thing. It's never been a bad thing. Our community, as brown and black people, we no, we don't need no help. No, ain't nothing wrong with me. Yes it is. Yes it is. You 35 years old, you ain't even in a stable relationship. Your life is not stable. You're not stable. As a person, you're not stable. So how can you expect somebody to want to be in a relationship with you when you nobody want that rockiness? Oh nah. We've been through that. I've been through that in my life. Like I told my wife, I need stability. I can't. I'm not the type to. Nah. Mm-mm. I don't do well in that type of environment of chaos. I don't do well. No. Mm-mm. I didn't come this far to be back in that type of environment. No, I can't do that. I can't raise my kids in that. I can't. It's very important, and that's one thing that we did even before getting married. We did counseling, because I need to know your background. I need to know where
Yeah.
you come from. I need to know, you know, your mother, your dad, your sister. I need to know your environment. I need to know all of that because you find it that as you live this life, and especially with a spouse or somebody you're with, they have triggers just like you do. And they triggers may be a little different than yours, but yet they're still triggers. Now it's important that, okay, if we're gonna live this life, and I told my wife this, that you had your life, I had my life. We need to build a life together,
Right.
you know, and also, being able to talk and communicate and being able to really sit down and dig deep and get rid of this baggage and these childhood traumas, even at teenager and as adults, because it's there and it's gonna happen.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you said it perfectly. I think too, as someone that has gone to therapy, you obviously can tell you have. And I think it takes people to be very intentional. And
Hmm.
sometimes it's hard to acknowledge that um, you may not be your best self. Again, it may go back to because I'm going to therapy is hard because
It
you have
is.
to address a lot of the stuff that you've been able to run away from, right? And you've been able to hide from. Um, Even once you remove the stigma, it's still hard because
Yeah,
um, no one, a lot of times we don't ever have those meaningful emotional conversations, and therapy makes you sit there and have those,
yeah,
right? And it could be
definitely.
scary because you're like, oh God, like, I remember how that pain felt when it first happened. I do not want to
Yeah.
feel this again.
And the thing about it is you're older too. So you
Yeah,
sitting in it. I know for me, I cried for a week straight.
yeah,
I
yeah,
did
yeah,
because you unpacking it allowed me to unpack so much stuff as a child. Like how my childhood was. So
yeah.
just being able to unpack all of that was it was therapeutic in a sense, but just digging and pulling and this come out and this come out. You like, where the hell did that come from?
Uh-huh.
Where did
Uh-huh.
that come from? And
Mhm.
this happened and that happened. You like,
Mhm.
you never knew that you had these feelings, and you never knew that you could be so emotional, but yet here you are. And it and I tell people, it's a day-to-day process. That's all you can do is just take it day to day, day to day.
And in those
In the
sessions,
long run, it'll help.
I'm sorry, in those sessions too, you cry, but always know too, after the crying and after um all of the processing, there's good on the other side,
Yep.
right? You
Yep.
become a better person. You start to see things a little differently. You start to respond to things a little differently, right? And so in that moment, I don't want to scare people and be like, it's so hard. It is hard. It can be difficult because feelings are hard, right?
Yes.
Really recognizing and acknowledging that maybe my parents didn't do the best that they could. Maybe,
Hmm.
their best just wasn't good enough, and maybe their
Yeah.
best caused me harm.
Yeah.
And so that could be scary. But on the other
Hmm.
side, there is love, there is being gentle and kind to yourself, and understanding that people are human, right? And
Hmm.
kind of releasing that anger and that low frustration tolerance and moving to a space of peace, right? In a
Yeah.
space of, like I said, acknowledge people are human, that people mess up, and I don't have to be so angry about that. I can acknowledge
Yeah.
how it made me feel, but I don't have to hold that. I can release it and move forward with my life and try to be a better person for myself.
Yeah. That's very important with what you just said about being a better important. I mean, being important for yourself because it's about you. Therapy is about you.
Hmm.
It's not about nobody else. It ain't
Hmm.
about nothing else. It's all about you.
Hmm.
And that's what makes therapy so good. Like you said, it's you go through the crying, you go through all these things. It's only because you're unpacking, you're getting rid of things.
Yeah.
But once all that weight is lifted off of you, now you can move. Now you can not, you can move in a different manner that
Yeah.
you had before. There's a lot of people that I know that walk around with a lot of baggage, and that baggage could be hurt. That
Mm-hmm.
baggage could be feeling alone. That
Mm-hmm.
baggage could be, all these things that you feel, that you just don't know what to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know how to navigate through your feelings.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody taught you how to do that,
Mm-hmm.
especially in a chaos environment. You're not taught. You're taught to
Mm-hmm.
survive.
Mm-hmm.
You're not taught to know what this is you're feeling and
Mm-hmm.
how to deal with it and how to talk through it.
Yeah.
You taught to, all right, I'm mad right now, so I'm going to act mad. It's going to show in my actions.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to come out in my voice. It's going to come out in in the things that I do.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I'm sad right now. Yeah, but you sitting over there in the ball, rocking yourself to sleep
Mm-hmm.
because you're sad or
Yeah.
you're depressed.
Yeah.
And these things we're not taught to us how to deal with these problems.
Mm-hmm.
And as an adult, when you're not taught, now you're on a bigger scale. Now you're amongst your peers. Now you're amongst these people that your friends and things like that. Now you have an outburst, and they like, "Why are you so angry?"
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you holding on to stuff that happened as a teenager. You holding on to stuff that happened as a kid,
Mm-hmm.
and you never dealt with. So now that's why I say it's very important that now it's time to go. It's time to go get checked out. It's time to go sit down
Mm-hmm.
and be a better you because we have kids now and we don't want that cycle to keep going. We want to break that cycle
Mm-hmm.
and we want our kids to be able to, you know, navigate their feelings
Yeah.
and be okay and be able to talk through their feelings and not being shut down because even back then a child was seen but not heard.
Mm-hmm.
Even that's a trauma
Yeah.
because now it's like, all right, nobody's talking. No, no, yeah, somebody is talking to me.
Mm-hmm.
This is how I feel.
Mm-hmm.
This is where I'm at.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I didn't like that, and that's
Mm-hmm.
okay
Uh-huh. Yeah.
because that child is expressing themselves that they
Mm-hmm.
didn't like that, and that's
Mm-hmm.
fine. One, you have to be okay with that as a parent.
Mm-hmm.
Two, they're expressing themselves. And
Yeah.
that's one thing I had to learn as growing up. Like, okay, as a dad, as a father, like Lola told me that, Daddy, I don't like. I'm like, huh? You don't like what? I don't like the way you talk to me. You said one, babe. I'm not screaming at you. I'm just talking. My voice is deep, but I understand how you feel.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
I'm here, and I
Mm-hmm.
hear you.
Mm-hmm.
Daddy won't do that again.
Mm-hmm. And
Even
that
with my
matters. That
boys.
makes a world of difference, right?
Even with my boys, like they know, yeah, I'm punishment type of person, but I learned and I've come to understand that these are teenage boys. I was a teenage boy at one point.
Mm-hmm.
No, was I disrespectful at some time with my mouth slick? No, but I did some other stuff. I lied a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't always truthful.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to give them the benefit of the doubt, and I also had to show them some grace. But at the end of the day, they teenage boys. Teenage boys can get a little wild too.
Mm-hmm.
But I also have to show them that, okay, with your actions come consequence. Now, I had to teach you that. I had to teach you that, okay, some things you don't need to say. Some things are better off unsaid. You don't have to answer everything. Everything don't need an answer. But if something is happening to you or you feel some type of way or you feeling how you feel, it's okay to express yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You don't got to be an outburst. You just say, hey, I feel like this. And we
Mm-hmm.
can navigate through that and we can talk about that and we get some understanding. As a kid, we didn't get that. I know I
Yeah.
didn't get it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that is very important with our teenage boys and our teenage girls, even our young boys and girls, that we are able to communicate with our kids because that's
Mm-hmm.
healthy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You empower your kid, right? And you teach them that because so I always tell parents, yes, you're raising a child, but you're also raising them to be an adult, right? So
Hmm.
don't think of like this kid as a kid. They're not going to be a kid forever. They're
Nope.
going to be an adult, And you can have well-rounded conversations with a child that's age appropriate, that will help them build, like you said, to communicate their feelings, to express when things are going the way that they wanted things to go. And you can teach them to do it in a healthy way that's respectful and respects other people's space and their boundaries and their level of comfort. But you don't want to ever diminish their voice, because then as they become adults, that's what they find to be normal, right? And that's how they find to communicate with other people in different spaces, because that's just how I've always been told to communicate. And then so when they become an adult, they're like, wait a minute, this isn't working for me. Or they become so angry because they're like, I've never been able to express my voice. I've always been
Exactly.
silenced. I've always been told to sit down or don't say anything. Or I've seen it the opposite, where they just never speak up and things just happen to them, and they go with it, but they're angry, but they just never say it. And then finally, when they blow up, everybody's looking like, wait a minute, what
Yeah.
happened?
Happened.
And it's like, it's been happening. It's just, I was never allowed to speak to that. So
Hmm.
now you're going to hear me.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's gonna sound a little different.
Hmm.
It's gonna
Hmm.
sound a lot different, you
It's going to
know.
look like rage. It's going to look like, sometimes people always wonder, like, well, why did that kid, when we were growing up, there's a lot of school shootings, and they would always go back and be like, well, why did that kid shoot up that school? And then you'd find a whole narrative of why they did it. So instead of
Hmm.
waiting until they become that ticking time bomb, you got to start listening to people, whether they're
Yes.
adults or whether they're kids.
Yeah. Definitely. That's one thing that me and my wife is trying to do with Lola. Like, she's like, why do you, jump at everything? Because one, she's a girl. Two, she's a little girl. And I'm going to give her the benefit of the doubt before I give anybody the benefit of the doubt. I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Nah, I'm not playing them games. She going to
Mm-hmm.
always know that daddy, I can come to
Mm-hmm.
daddy and I
Mm-hmm.
can tell him what's wrong and we
Mm-hmm.
can check that shit out.
Mm-hmm.
I'm
Mm-hmm.
not playing them games. I'm not doing that. No, no. Well,
And
she did. No.
you build that safety net with her, right? You
Yeah.
build that trust with her, where she's like, no matter what happened, my dad gonna come.
Yep.
We'll figure out the minutia when he get
With-
here, but he
yep.
gonna come. And so that
Yep.
sets up a tone for her too when she becomes an adult. What is that level of expectation of a male figure in my life, right? Are men consistent or are they
Hmm.
inconsistent? Well, my dad
Hmm.
was consistent, so I'm not tolerating inconsistency. I'm not tolerating,
Consistency.
you
Yep.
gaslighting me and invalidating my feelings, because my dad validated me. My dad heard my truth and he spoke to that. So it does. You
Hmm.
as the parent are the blueprint of what kids will expect as they become adults, right? Kids
Hmm.
watch you. They watch us. They observe. They notice. And they continue those same patterns and behaviors unless they go to therapy and disrupt it. But if it's positive, we keep it, right? We just hold on to
Yeah.
that. That becomes our norm.
Yeah. Definitely. I know one thing I can speak to for myself is even with getting my wife and, she had two kids and just that whole dynamic. I know growing up, there wasn't no plan with us. The adults didn't play with kids.
Mm-hmm.
I had to break that. I had to break that mindset of, you know, playing with kids in a
Mm-hmm.
sense,
Mm-hmm.
because sometimes kids don't know when to stop playing. That was one of the things that I had to work on. It took me a long time to get past. And like I said, that's a childhood trauma.
Mm-hmm.
These things that you're being told as a child, and you become an adult and you have your own kids, and you like, and they be like, Dad, why you act like that? Why you so serious?
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't mean to be serious. Just I took my upbringing and programmed it into myself,
Mm-hmm.
and I had to find myself. I mean, me personally, honestly, I had to really break myself down and reprogram a lot of things that I learned as a child or that I was told as a child, because I have my own kids
Mm-hmm.
and I can't, in a sense, bring that type of environment, in a sense, to where I'm at today, because one, it's completely different. Kids are completely different.
Two, I want a different environment for my kids.
Mm-hmm.
I can't bring the environment I grew up
Mm-hmm.
in the
Mm-hmm.
sense of, being told, kids don't, I mean, adults don't play with kids and, everything that went on with that to what I have now, my wife and my kids. Like, all right, I got to be more outgoing, more not so serious, not
Mm-hmm.
taking things personal, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's one of the things that I had to do for myself in a sense of mental health and relinquishing some things of my childhood and reprogramming myself and how I want my house to look like and what I want my house to look like.
Yeah.
You know, Walking around here like, man, dishes need to be done, all that stuff. Nah, just take a break.
Yeah.
Take a break.
Yeah.
Everything don't need to be, so serious. Everything don't need no, just take a break. Your
Yeah.
kids. Just take a
Yeah.
break.
Yeah. Yeah. You have to be intentional. That's definitely key. Being intentional about your change.
Hmm. Yeah. I know we've been on for a minute. It's been an hour. I know you got things you gotta do. I got things I gotta go to the store. Since the wife just got back with Waffle House, so I
Oh,
gotta eat
the
some
waffle.
breakfast and I'm gonna go to the
Good.
store. Yeah, I know, right? I said to this morning like, babe, go get some Waffle House for me. We gotta eat. So
Yeah.
uh thank you, Marquita, for
No
coming
problem.
on and
Yeah. Thank you for
um
having me.
I appreciate this because this was help for me also in a sense. And I'm glad because this people can hear this and get some understanding and get some knowledge of therapy
Yeah.
and being intentional
Yeah.
with therapy
Yeah.
because it's important in the
Yeah.
black and brown community that we go get that checkup, we go
Yeah.
get that sit down
Yeah.
and unbag and get rid of this stuff so we can be a better us.
Mm-hmm.
So thanks for coming on. I
Yeah.
know
Thanks for
it's
having
super early out there.
me.
No problem. Um,
Yeah.
and yeah, we gotta definitely do this again. I'm gonna get the people. I'm gonna get us together. Me, you, Marshawn, Uncle Dempster, and everybody together because I can stream 10 people
Okay.
at
Yeah.
once.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So I
Yeah. Let's
think
do that.
that'll be very cool.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have Uncle Dempster on probably on later, and I'm gonna pick
Nice.
his brain.
Nice.
Uh, because I know he's in the retail field,
Yeah.
and I'm
Yeah.
gonna pick
Yeah.
his brain. I got to pick his brain because he's
Yeah.
been doing it for a minute.
Tell
I
him
got to
give
pick his
some
brain.
tips and a discount. I'm just kidding.
I know, right? Send me something.
All
Send me
right.
something
I need
for
new
real.
comforter.
Yeah, for real. And we're gonna talk about his football career at the infamous
Mm-hmm.
Dorsey High School. So I
Mm-hmm.
think that'll be fun. I
Yeah.
think that'll be real cool.
Yeah.
So thanks again,
Yeah.
and I'll talk to you later. All right.
All right.
All
Bye.
right. Bye.